We're going to help you correct 3 volunteer recruitment mistakes right now on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and A.J. Mathieu.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, A.J. Mathieu.
Ready to go.
All right, let me start you off with a scene here. It's Thursday night. The kids' ministry director is one Sunday school teacher short again. Someone's called out sick, or they went up to Gatlinburg for the weekend. Mm-hmm. And so she does the same thing that every church does. She gets up on Sunday and says, look, we really need more volunteers. Or she cons the pastor into saying, please get up there and beg from the pulpit. Guilt people, pull out every trick you have in the book to get some people to sign up to be children's ministry volunteers. So, you know, have you seen this before? I'm embellishing a little bit, but some version of this has happened in many a church.
Sure. Probably the most common volunteer ask is children's ministry. They need the most people in most churches. Yeah.
But it's not just children's ministry. You know, I was visiting a church recently, and they weren't asking for volunteers in this, and they did a wonderful job, so I don't want to mischaracterize in any way. But they were like, hey, sorry, they almost were apologizing for the fact that they only had like acoustic musicians up there, which my advice to that is always like, you don't have to point it out. You know what I mean? Like, just do it. Like, you don't have to go, hey, we don't have anybody to play drums this week, so we're doing acoustic. Just do it. I mean, I wouldn't have known that was different. You know what I mean? Well, that's a side point. But, every ministry could have more volunteers. You could always have more greeters, more ushers, more people in the tech booth, more band members, and certainly more children's ministry people. And so today we're going to work through what are some really common volunteer recruitment mistakes that churches make, and how we can resolve them. Before we dive into that, though, I want to remind you that we have a webinar coming up. Actually, this is being released. It'll be tomorrow. So you want to go to malphursgroup.com/webinar and sign up for that. It is a leadership, how to build and manage your leadership pipeline webinar. So it's really close to this topic today. This is maybe an extension of what we're going to be covering tomorrow. And even throughout the episode today, we might be referencing some tools that we have inside the Healthy Churches Toolkit that if you would like to see those tools and how they work, go to the webinar. And if you're listening to this later, that's okay. Still go to malphursgroup.com/webinar, except instead of seeing a registration link, you will see a download the replay, access the replay link. So we'll switch that over. If you missed it live, you can watch the replay.
Also available on our YouTube channel, Malphurs Group on YouTube, and you can catch it over there. So that's August 27th, 2026 is the date of the webinar. So hopefully you can make it for that. Lots of people
1 p.m. Eastern.
Would love to have you. There you go. 1 p.m. Eastern, August 27th.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. You got it.
All right. Good move. And we're going to go deep on how can we leverage the toolkit to manage our pipeline of volunteers, which is the problem that we're identifying today on the podcast. Instead of the, hey, get up there and just please, we need somebody, what we want to correct and have for you in the future is that we already have an assortment of people that we know we could just even one-on-one contact, or we have somebody that could move up into a different role. So let's talk through some mistakes, Scott. We got 3 mistakes that churches commonly make in what they think is recruiting for volunteer roles in the church.
Yes, indeed. So the first one is recruiting reactively. So we kind of teased this actually in the opener. But we kind of only recruit when there's a slot that's already empty. So we've got like we know we need 3 more people to serve in the nursery, so that's when we do it. Or we kind of wait till there's a crisis, like someone quit, we don't have enough people to fill the slots. We're going to have to combine classes over the summer because we don't have enough volunteers, something like that. And the reason why this is a mistake is that people can feel the desperation. And really it only works, these kinds of like heavy pushes from the pulpit, generally speaking, only work best with people who respond to guilt trips. And some people are really turned off by that and will go, no thanks. Like, I that sounds terrible maybe, but I mean, I think that sometimes people see that and go, no. And maybe your more spiritually mature people won't have that kind of reaction, but your spiritually mature people are probably already volunteering. And so sometimes what happens is this is how people end up serving in 3, 4, 5 different areas, is because they're like, someone needs to step up. And so the people who are already stepping up are the people who step up. And the people who are less spiritually mature, who maybe don't have as good of an attitude, they hear these desperate pleas and go, that sounds desperate. I'm not helping. That sounds terrible. I'm not going to participate. And those are really the people you want to get activated. So there's got to be a better way of doing that. And the way you're doing it right now is probably not the way that's going to work best.
Yeah. So what are we going to do to fix that then, Scott? We need to have a pipeline of volunteers, right? We need to know who do we already know? Who might be the best fit for this ministry instead of the arm twisting that we're just doing?
Yeah. So one of the things that we do inside or have available inside the Healthy Churches Toolkit is this divine design assessment. So, in it, we run people through a very simple, I mean, it's very simple. It doesn't take more than a couple of minutes. It's a DISC assessment, so a personality or temperament assessment, and then a spiritual gifts assessment, which is not authoritative on anybody's life. It's not like this says you have the spiritual gift of teaching, therefore, you're I don't know, you're automatic. Fill in whoever your favorite
you're
Bible
preaching
teacher
next
is.
Sunday, buddy. Thanks for filling that out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're immediately called up. But it's at least an indicator, or maybe some sort of a hint that someone might have an inclination towards something or gifting towards something. And the goal would be to get as many people in your church, or people who are connected to your church, especially people who are newer to your church, but everyone, to go through this process, through this assessment, so that you can start to build out that roster and go, who is available? And what are the giftings that we have? There are people who are sitting in the pews or in the chairs in your church that you don't even know the gifting they have. And the sad thing is, they probably don't even know the gifting that they have. And they certainly don't know how to apply that, and which we'll talk about here in just a second. But the first kind of key step, the first key fix, is to help people to understand what their capacity is, and for you to understand who is here in the room. Who do we have already in the room that is simply inactive? We've got a spiritual unemployment problem going on in the church.
Yeah. Yep. Well, let's slide this into our next mistake, because this is really what we're getting into on this one, because the mistake that most churches make is that they treat every slot, every ministry volunteer opportunity the same in the church, as if anybody can do anything. And this is the error. This is why you end up with more turnover in probably almost every volunteer space in the church, is because we didn't spend any time trying to figure out if someone was the right fit for a position. Instead, we took somebody based on availability and willingness, which is, sometimes you got to maybe handle things that way in an emergency. But that would be like on a temporary basis, like, okay, that person, was available because it was super critical. We had 2 people call in sick today, and somebody just went in there to make sure that, the wheels didn't come off. But But that's not a long-term solution. And the long-term solution is what you're just describing, Scott. We know who is here. And we're able to make that match happen.
Right.
And that is going to allow for much longer tenure in volunteer serving areas, because people are going to just feel like it's a good fit for me. I know what I'm doing is important, and I know that I'm needed. I know I'm appreciated, and this ministry is doing well because it's a good fit.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that one of the things that's helpful, again, to kind of just point back to a tool that we have in the toolkit, is to understand the pipeline health. How many of each volunteer or of each role do we need? So, we've got 3 people who serve in the elementary classroom, but there's 4 weeks in a month, and so are we asking 2 people get to serve every other week, but 1 person has to serve every week? What do we do when there's 5 Sundays? Do we have enough people to give people breaks so that they don't burn out? And so then it just becomes a question of what's the fill percentage on this, and who else could we ask to step into that role? So then kind of going backwards then to our divine design thing is okay, can I find all of the people in my church who have taken this assessment, who are unassigned, who haven't been put on any team right now? And one of the things we teach in our leadership pipeline process is people can take up to 2 roles. So we would say one area where you're level 1, and then another area where you're level 2 or above, which you might be like, well, what's level 1? What's level 2? We've done episodes on this, and you can go back and find it, or actually just go to the webinar or access the webinar, because we're going to talk briefly about leadership levels here in the webinar as well. But you can find somebody who is underemployed. Maybe they're a greeter, but that's the only thing they're doing, so they've got capacity to add on. Or maybe you go through this process and you identify people who have a higher ceiling than what they're doing right now. Right now they're a greeter, or right now they're a teacher, but they could be a coordinator. You could kind of roll them into a position that really maximizes their gifting. So making sure you've got the right people in the right roles is really important, and it's very difficult to do this without some sort of resources or tools. Otherwise, you're limited by the number of people you can keep track of in your brain, and I hate to say it this way, but your gut instinct on what their gifting might be.
Yeah.
Extent of any objective information that would tell you something about what they're good at. You might have a good read on people, but you don't have a good read on every person in your church.
Yeah.
And maybe you actually don't have a good read on everybody.
Maybe
You probably have a good read on some people, but the number of people you would need to have a good read on in order to fill in every slot, every role is there's a gap there between the number of people you can know really well and the number of roles you have to fill in your church.
Well, was it last week, Scott, or the week before? We just did an episode on why your gut is not the best way to make decisions. So,
exactly.
You can go back and check that out. Yeah, I mean, I sometimes it might feel counterintuitive sometimes. They're like, oh, if I could just get one person to do this, and then you're okay with them doing it every week. So what's the harder ask? One person to serve every week, or 2 people to serve twice a month? 2 people to serve twice a month is the easier. What's the harder ask? 2 people to serve twice a month, or 4 people to serve 1 week a month? Okay. So, I mean, now, your church of 32 people, you are not going to have that luxury. But for, a normative sized church, or a small, even medium sized church, you probably have got more people available than you would know, because you haven't framed the ask in a way that they would go, oh, that's not as bad as I would have expected. Another thing, Scott, that just occurred to me as you were talking about mentioning like the coordinator level of a pipeline, and as you go up in leadership levels, the quantity needed gets smaller and smaller. So not everybody can serve in higher leadership levels, but it might be easier to fill a coordinator level in children's ministry when the person finds out, oh, I don't actually have to interact a lot with the kids, because that's about, it's a completely different thing. So my skills in managing adults, coordinating a schedule for an adult volunteer team sounds way more attractive at that coordinator level. So, it's just worth looking at this, but that's the benefit of having a volunteer job description. You can describe the children's ministry elementary coordinator is, it's a scheduling task. It's, managing volunteer team, doing some coaching,
Right.
and you're not changing diapers. So
Yeah. Or the dawn of realization. This happens every time I lead churches through the pipeline workshop, and when we say, no. If you're the coordinator, you're not also in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an expansion of your role as a teacher.
It's a separate role. Right.
It's a different role. You'll go, oh. There's this process like, oh, that sounds great. Oh no, I lose a teacher. Oh, but this could be okay if I, there's sort of the sequence of thought processes that happens there. But okay. So we can move on to number 3.
All right, our last mistake to bring to you today is that there's no follow-up after somebody says, yes, I'll do that. We just, we give them the 15-minute orientation, and then you can, talk to Mike, talk to Janet over there if you have any questions, and then we just kind of let them go. And that's just a formula for probably short tenure, or a frustrating 6 months for that person, hoping that they've got the fortitude to just stick it out. Like, I know this will get better. What could we do differently? Well, we could actually have a decent orientation. First of all, even on the recruiting side, again, we can have a volunteer job description that gives them a sense of what am I saying yes to? Mm-hmm. Meeting people's expectations goes a long way in even a system that has a lot of bumps along the way. They're like, well, I know what we're going for and I can get there. But walking in blind, or with very little orientation, that's, you're gambling there. How long will they stay? Right. So knowing what they're stepping into, having a respectable orientation process, that they can go through, being able to get questions answered, showing them, best practices and whatever is happening in this ministry, and then actually having regular and often points of contact with the person that they're, serving beneath, whoever is they're reporting to or is overseeing that ministry area, where they can have some one-on-one time with them. They can, even if it's a few minutes, every week before they get started, or once a month, we can have a coffee together. And that is going to go a long way. That they know there's somebody that is aware that they're there, knows who they are, cares about them, and we integrate a discipleship element into our serving areas in the church. Huge, huge change from the way most churches are doing it now.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that this is another great way to sort of even accelerate that a bit, AJ, is to systematize or to formalize that check-in process so that it's done consistently. You don't have to wonder, I don't know, how is Scott going to do a check-in versus how AJ is going to do a check-in? And is there any sort of documentation on how any of that went? And because what if Jimmy is volunteering in this ministry now, but 2 years from now he's serving in a different ministry? How has Jimmy grown, or what have been the consistent challenges that Jimmy's had to deal with, and the way he's overcome them? So being able to systematize this in such a way is really, really important. And that's why we've built those tools into the toolkit as well, that it's not just a way to kind of see and roster roles, but also be able to manage someone through that process of growth, so that somebody who starts out as a greeter may one day become an elder in your church. I don't think that'll happen overnight, but it shouldn't probably happen overnight, but it can happen over a long period of time if we're investing in people. The number one thing, we talked about this in last week's episode, was on solving the next gen leadership crisis. And one of the things that we talked about in that episode is this idea that you can't microwave a leader, And, if you want to see someone grow over time, you have to start them off in one role and let them kind of grow through the pipeline, through the process. And so the only way that you can do that is if you have this relentless commitment to leadership development.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not going to happen on accident. It's only going to happen if it's intentional. And it can't just fall on the pastor's shoulders. I'm guessing if you're listening to this and you're a pastor, you're going, well, I'm investing in some people. That's fantastic. I keep doing that. But the real growth comes from all of the leadership structure, raising up the leaders that are beneath them in their sort of span of control and helping them to grow, because it's going to take more than just one person to grow that network of healthy leaders within your church.
Yep. This is what we're going to walk through with you in the webinar on Thursday. So the Healthy Churches Toolkit is, completely designed around having this pipeline be easy to manage, easy to view, and getting people connected into the right spots. So we hope you'll join us for that webinar. If you go to malphursgroup.com/webinar, you can sign up for that today. And Scott, tell us a little bit about the cohort opportunity coming right on the heels of the webinar.
Yeah. So starting the week after Labor Day, we are going to have a cohort, a leadership pipeline cohort, where we're going to walk you through building your leadership pipeline. Like, what are the levels of leadership in your church? What are all the positions that map out to those? How do we build the core competencies for leaders in our church? How do we get job descriptions put together in a relatively short order? How do we start deploying that divine design assessment? How do we start filling roles? All of that right now might sound like super intimidating, even with a tool like the Toolkit. It's just a tool. A hammer is helpful for putting a nail in wood, right? But it still takes a person to hammer it. Like it makes the job easier, but it doesn't do the job alone. And so we recognize that that's intimidating. So what we're doing, I think is really cool and a huge risk on our part, but whatever. The cohort's completely free. There's no cost at all to do the cohort. You do need the Toolkit subscription because we're building these things in the Toolkit. So you get an annual plus subscription is what you pay for. And then the cohort itself costs nothing. So my time leading that cohort over the course of 90 days is $0. So if you've been thinking, gosh, I've been thinking about this Toolkit, but I don't know if I've got the time. I don't want to purchase something and then not know how to use it. You don't have to worry about that. We're going to meet 6 times over the course of 90 days, and I'm going to walk you through step by step how you build out your leadership pipeline in the Toolkit. And so that by the time you're rolling into January 2027, you've got the whole thing built. You're already rostering people in positions, and you're beginning that process we talked about in step 3 of coaching people up. So it's the best deal you're ever going to find, the cost being free, but you do need that Toolkit subscription because we're building the things in the Toolkit.
Yeah, huge value. Definitely take advantage of that. That's at malphursgroup.com/pipeline-webinar. We will have that link in. If you're watching this on YouTube, that'll be in the video description below, and in this week's article show notes as well. So you can sign up for that. If you're not on our mailing list, go to malphursgroup.com, scroll all the way down to the bottom, and you can join our mailing list there so that you'll get notifications about our weekly article, podcast.
You got to tell you know what? Stuff. If you sign up for this webinar, you'll end up on the mailing list. If you,
sure.
You know how these things work. Y'all are smart people. If you sign up for something on our website, anything, you'll start getting our emails.
We want to talk to you.
We want
to get to know you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Hey, thanks for being with us, everybody, on the Church Revitalization Podcast. We hope this is going to be helpful for you to recruit better and longer serving volunteers in your church. Scott and I will see you again next week.